Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Andy Thompson Cooking Show. And today we're looking into noodles. Just kidding, folks. Welcome to the Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, where we tell tempting tales of Tomorrowland. And today we're looking into the digital crystal ball, and it's not great news for fans of petrol-guzzling supercars like Ferrari and Lamborghini, because there is a new Chinese super EV on the market, and it's set to leave them all in noiseless awe. We're also going to zoom into RMIT to see what they've been doing with titanium and 3D printers. And we're going to look into an odd little mashup between a prominent lawnmower maker and the producers of the classic video game Doom. Sounds like the sort of fun where nothing could possibly go wrong. But without any further ado, coming into land right here at the microphone, it's Matthew Dickerson. How's your week been, Matt?
Well, the trick intro would have worked better if we didn't have the music that played before the start.
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe we should do that again.
In my head, it's the music coming after that a little bit. But but then I stuffed up the next bit anyway, so it doesn't even matter.
That's fine. So this week, just before we get started, I actually found something quite interesting around a Taylor Swift concert. Now, I didn't go. I think Taylor's okay, but I didn't get motivated enough to go. But
oh, you're not a Swiftie.
Oh, look. I think her music is nice, but I'm not going to get motivated enough to go and get
I know of people our age who went to the Taylor Swift concert. They are sold.
I hope they got dressed up in all the glitterati or the appropriate dress that you have to have.
There's no one demographic for Taylor Swift fans.
No,
the Swifties are all sorts of people.
But some of my kids went, and the thing that impressed my technologically focused children more than the concert was impressive as well, but from a technology perspective, the wristbands. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the most advanced wristbands that fans have at a concert. I don't know how many other fans have wristbands at concerts, so I'm pretty safe there, I think. But what happens with these wristbands is each wristband that you're given as you come in, hi, you're a fan, or not just a fan, you've got a ticket, have one of these wristbands. Each wristband's got a unique identifier. So then when you sit in the audience, it can identify you and actually your location as well.
This is going to get the conspiracy theorists going crazy.
I hope so. And then you're part of the concert. So when you're sitting there in the audience, in different songs at various parts, there'll be different wristbands going off across the entire audience. So just imagine sitting there with almost 100,000 people and the wristbands are going and perfectly synchronised as part of the song. So I did a bit more research on them. And they do actually have the LEDs, but they are all uniquely identifiable across those 100,000 or thereabouts across the audience. And then there are some songs where a certain word that Taylor will hit will trigger every wristband to light up. So you can just imagine 100,000 of these only not very bright wristbands, but put them together and you get a whole audience that or the whole lights just light up. And then different songs, there'll be different ones going on throughout the song. And I just thought, when you're planning an event like a Taylor Swift concert and you're saying, how can we make it bigger and better? A lot of production companies would just focus on the stage and what's happening with the artist and what's happening with the dancers and the light show, to actually include the audience and then actually have the technology for the audience. No wonder tickets were so expensive because everyone had to get their wristband as well. But that I thought was pretty impressive from a technology point of view, and also shows just how far we've come in terms of being able to address individual devices there. Now,
well, the pressure's on now. There's an expectation.
Oh, that's the problem, isn't it? We've got to be better than a Taylor Swift concert. What can we do?
Yeah. Oh, dear. Everyone gets a free helicopter. Anyway, congratulations to Taylor. I know she listens. She's a regular listener to the podcast.
Obviously.
But yeah, well done on an awesome tour. Okie dokie, it's time to get into business with the job that we came here to do. Our first story goes out to the nostalgia buffs, particularly the folks who loved their flip phones back in the day and love their tech with just a touch of kitsch. This phone has the Barbie signature all over it, folks. Indeed, it's the Barbie flip phone, and Matt, I can hear people squealing with delight
exactly.
on the other end of the speakers.
So this phone started its life back on the 9th of March 1959. That's when Barbara Millicent Roberts was first launched to the world at the International Toy Fair in New York. So we've gone a long way since then, and obviously Barbie, as she's better known now rather than her full name, is being used in a whole range of different collaborations with different companies, but the latest is with HMD. Now, HMD, people may know because they effectively revitalised Nokia phones. So they brought back some of the old classic Nokia phones. So they've teamed up with Mattel and they've brought out the Barbie flip phone. Now, the first thing you'd say, well, hold on, Barbie's a modern woman. Surely she'd have the latest in smartphones. But I think it's a bit of a reflection on the Barbie that we know and love, a modern version of the Barbie, which would be a flip phone. That'd be pretty
I think
chic
so.
For Barbie, I think, to flip open the phone and start talking, pull up the antenna and start talking. But also, there's a bit of a movement where some people are trying to do a bit of a digital detox. And I'm talking about Gen Zs, millennials here. So reduce your social media usage a bit. And so, for example, you might have your normal smartphone because you've got your apps you need on there for work or whatever it might be, but you're going out to the pub on a Saturday night, you want to catch up with some friends.
With your pink sunglasses on.
That's right.
Your head all done up high, yeah.
And you take your SIM card out of your smartphone, you stick it in your Barbie flip phone. Sure, you can still be telephoned and maybe send a text, but you're not going to be distracted by all those social media apps. So you can go out there and talk to your friends and not be distracted. Not sure how you order an Uber at the end of the night, but that's a separate issue. You might have to get a taxi, good old-fashioned taxi. But this is actually a bit of a movement. And so HMD believe the success they had out of their Nokia phone revitalisation, the same sort of success they're going to have with Barbie, plus the fact that some people will just buy anything Barbie.
Well, it'll be interesting to see just how strong the culture is and how it sways.
And it's funny.
And what stems from it.
Yeah, and they've said that this phone is not exclusively for women. But I must admit, I don't know a lot of guys who would go and buy a pink Barbie flip phone as their digital detox to go to their pub or the footy on a Saturday night with their mates.
G.I. Joe one, perhaps.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So I think it is mainly focused on women. Maybe I'm being a bit sexist there with the pink colour, but it just seems like that. But the other thing that's a bit of an issue here is they've said that they've made this to be a bit longer use than upgrade every year because it's not got all the latest fancy flash features and they're not going to keep upgrading it. One of the things they talked about with this is there are 5 billion, is the estimation, 5 billion dormant phones contributing to e-waste. Well, some of them aren't actually contributing to e-waste at the moment because they're in the bottom drawer of people's desks and they will contribute to e-waste at some point in time because the people who upgrade their phone every year sometimes keep their old phone just in case and they've got their last 5 just-in-case phones, so that's a bit of an issue as well. So they've focused down that line. I think they'll sell just because it's Barbie and just because it's a bit cool, but I'm not sure that I personally want one.
We'll have to do a review when we this time next year and see how it all went.
Exactly right.
Lego fans will know that it's not just the pieces that you put together, it's the organisation of the pieces in the work that give the structure all its properties. With that understanding, the clever folks at the RMIT in Melbourne have worked out that through the modern marvel of 3D printing using titanium with highly precise detail, we can solve some of the curly challenges that have been troubling engineers for some time now. Matt, what are the finer points of this and what can we do now that we couldn't do before?
Well, it's a good point you bring up, with the Lego because the science and engineering challenge is on this week.
Yeah.
And I've got to go along to that and represent the engineers, if you like, to go and build a structure. And, of course, we've got bits of paper and little bits of balsa wood and some little components
and straws and
And you're right, what you can build out of all that, the strength of that is quite different based on the structure, even though you've got the same material. So I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned Lego there. But this is interesting. And what I do love about humans is we've got something like titanium. It's an element. It's a very well-known element. It's strong. It's lightweight. I've seen it used in things like I've ridden on push bikes on it. People I know have got bits and pieces of their body that are made from titanium.
Yeah, golf clubs are a popular one. But
golf clubs, that's right. Aerospace, not that I actually go and fly aerospace devices, but certainly you know about them in those. So it's well known, and we tend to accept that it's an element. It's put together in you basically build it, something out of titanium, and it's got a certain range of properties. But of course, you keep talking about material science.
Bingo.
That's the thing. So metamaterials is the term that they give to materials that have engineered to have properties that aren't natural. So they try and work out other ways. And of course, with this one, they've turned to nature. How many times do we see scientists turn to nature? And they've studied some natural structures in plants and coral in particular. And then they've tried to take the structures, and we're talking about down to the molecular level here, to see if they can basically re-engineer titanium with those structures and then make it stronger. And of course, they've done that. And I thought it might have been, when I first started looking at this story, I thought it might have been just different alloys, but it's not talking about certain alloys of titanium, and there are a range of those, but it's really talking about the lattice structures within that. Now, to build this gets tricky. I'm not sure if you happen to have a spare laser powder bed fusion machine. Not many around.
Mine's not working.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
I was going to have a play with it. It was. Right. So if you've got one of those, what you can do with that is you take titanium powder and then hit it with some lasers with your laser powder bed fusion machine, and that's how you can build up this. So this is what the researchers have found at RMIT. So it's not a normal way of using titanium where you basically melt it and pour it into a mould, for example. They're using a 3D printing process using powdered form of it and then laser. So it's a fairly complicated process, but what they're getting out of it is potentially a 50% increase in strength out of the same structure, the same amount of titanium, the same physical external structure, but just by changing that internal lattice-like structure.
But what are they looking to use this new structure of titanium for?
Anything. So all the things we use it for now. So if I've got to get some part of my body replaced, for example, then I'd like less weight in that. So if they're building a ship, a rocket ship that's got to go into space, then obviously every gram they can save is less weight they've got to put up into the sky. So all the things that they make out of titanium now, they could use this for, but it will just mean that they could use less or make it stronger.
Further. Less density.
Right. So, but it's just great that we think we've got something that we know and understand and we've used for a long time, but no, we come up with better ways.
Well, that's the problem is we feel like something's working so well right now, why change it? But then it requires someone who can think with an original thought, and that's a hard thing to do, folks.
That's right.
Have an original thought to think, well, hang on, surely we could do this better.
And I always think about the person who comes up with the idea. So you're sitting around at RMIT and someone says, you know what about if we, and they go through this whole series of things, and everyone else around the table possibly would go, nah, we know titanium. It's working really well. We've been working with it for so long, we know how to do it. So convincing some people to allow you to go and do some of this experimentation or just going and doing it yourself, not really knowing what the answer will be, that's what's great about humans.
But can you imagine, so much science has also come about by accident.
Yeah.
Just the right person was, watching something happen and thought, oh, hang on, you could apply that to insert whatever random sort of technology into that, and bingo, you've got this brand new sort of...
So you're saying someone was sitting in the garage playing with their laser powder bed fusion machine and they went, aha.
No, what I was thinking was that someone was watching a documentary or talking with someone in the biology lab, and they were saying, oh, yeah, and look at this. It's an amazing structure that occurs in cells.
Yep.
And someone's gone, well, we've been playing around with titanium. I wonder if you could...
Yep. And that collaboration, away you go.
Put that laser fusion machine to good work. Dust it off. Here's a story for our HSC biology student listeners. The ability to manipulate genetics began when the first farmers took to selecting mates in their herds to breed the most viable offspring. Since that moment, which was possibly as long as 11,000 years ago, farmers have been seeking to refine the characteristics of their herd and celebrate when they get it right. That's the entire foundation of the Royal Easter Show and its regional cousins, folks. In 2022, I've gone back 2 years, it's 2024 now, we have moved on and we are now able to alter the genetics of organisms at the molecular level. It's enormously troubling for some members of the community in terms of the ethics involved. But Matt has a story here where altering the genome of pigs may actually stave off a porcine pandemic. Matt.
It's a really good point you make that forever you've had selection of the best livestock to then be bred for the best livestock. Horse racing, you don't pick a horse that's never won a race and finishes last in the field.
Randomly, been born from two random parents.
That's right. You've got so many things where we are effectively gene selecting.
We've been doing it with chickens and pigs and sheep and cows and horses.
And you can even argue with humans.
Goats. For a long time.
And the old jokes about Darwinism, where some people are eliminated from the human race. So the ethics there then. So we've been doing it when it's been natural. But when
we say natural, but it's unnatural selection because we've been choosing that
for
true.
11,000
years.
Yeah, very
we
good
say
point.
natural because they're breeding in a natural way, but we're still selecting.
So in 2012, when CRISPR was first revealed to the world, CRISPR, of course, stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. Most people just talk about CRISPR being a gene editing tool. When that was introduced to the world, then people started to go, ooh, not sure if I like this because it's unnatural. But to your point, we've already been using unnatural processes for thousands of years. So how unnatural is it? It does still scare people, but the effect that it can have is it can accelerate some of that natural breeding. So pigs, for example, we've got a problem with porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome, good old PRRS. At the moment, it's costing the pork industry about $2.7 billion a year. Now, they've tried vaccines and they have only really offered some mitigation around symptoms but haven't actually stopped the syndrome itself. Antibiotics have been okay, but then you've got some resistant bacterial strains that have occurred. So you're now using CRISPR. Now, one company has got to the point where they've removed good old CD163. That's the problem protein. and so they've been able to breed pigs that are PRRS resistant pigs. So happy days.
So they come under the heading of GM. And GM has got so much genetically modified organisms. There are so many different ways we can do it. In this case, we're effectively just deleting a gene, aren't we?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. And this is the gene that basically allows those pigs to, once that's gone, to be resistant to PRRS. Then you breed with those pigs, and of course each generation of those pigs is fine because that gene has been edited in one of those pigs. So it does sound scary, but it also sounds effective, really effective and very quick to be effective.
Yeah.
Now, where people do get a bit scared about it is that there have been some examples in the testing they've been doing where they've had some unintended genomic alterations.
Right.
I couldn't find out exactly what that meant. Did that mean 5-footed pigs? Did that mean pigs with 3 eyes? I don't know. That would be the things that people would talk about and the scary part. But
well, at the level that they're looking at, the molecular level, it could just be an inversion of another gene or an insertion of another gene or something with not necessarily any effects that we can actually pick even.
Correct. Again, you think about all the people that would be concerned about this, they'd be talking about all these 5-legged pigs running around or whatever it might be. So, but they have been successfully breeding them. They've actually been going down the process of getting FDA approval for sales of these pigs. Now, they believe that by early next year, early 2025, these pigs will be on the market. Now, there's all sorts of issues around labelling, making sure it's got GMO or something on there. Gene editing, do you need something different for gene editing? But certainly there'll be some labelling on there. They're also trying to get regulatory nods from the other pork-consuming countries like China and Mexico. Again, this is a big problem worldwide. Whether or not we as humans accept that this is all okay, I tend to think most people would walk into a supermarket and they say, oh, good, I can get some or I can't get some, I'll get some, thanks. So it's interesting. But just the technology we've got there, focus on that for a moment. CRISPR technology is absolutely unbelievable. And then when we start editing out issues with pigs, issues with livestock, how long before we go along and say, oh, cancer in a human, we'll get that edited out, or multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's, whatever it might be. I don't know about any of those. I'm making that up. But
no, but it makes sense, doesn't it?
At some stage, yeah.
Yeah. If we can cut, gene disorders, genetic disorders out of the human population, what an advantage that'd be.
What an advantage now. So people get scared about it, then someone says, your son who's got a particular issue that we can use CRISPR to remove that. How do you feel about it now? Suddenly people might be a bit more accepting of it.
Well, you were talking about, the fact that you walk into a supermarket and it's sitting on the shelves there. Do I have it or don't I have it? Well, if it's not there, I can't have it. I think I'll just choose to have it. I think back about 100 years ago, or over 100 years ago, when Fritz Haber developed the Haber process, which meant that we were able to develop synthetic fertilizers. And he enabled the population to swell to the world population to swell to the numbers it is today, 8 billion people. And it's because we've been able to use synthetic fertilizers rather than cow poo, chook poo, sheep poo. But now that's becoming not enough. So if we are going to sustain our population, I think we're going to have to look to how can we get higher yields or protect the organisms, the agricultural organisms that we're growing, to be able to feed our population consistently. And I think this is one way that we do it.
Absolutely right. So I think it'll be a moot point in 10 years' time, but at the moment, CRISPR still does scare people. It's only been around for 12 years.
Does a little bit, yeah. Now, I mentioned in the intro to the last story that the world of science and technology is no stranger to ethical debate. We can do all sorts of stuff now, but the question is whether or not we should just do it. And that's paraphrasing Jeff Goldblum from, Jurassic Park it was. Yeah, who thought too much about whether or not you could and didn't think hard enough about whether or not you should. Well, with all the wonders that AI can bring, constructing video and synthesizing voice, how would you feel about FaceTiming a friend or relative that had just passed away? I can sense mumbling and jostling through the speakers as I speak right now. I reckon people will have fairly strong opinions on this, but Matt, objectively speaking, what are your thoughts?
Well, there are a few different ways you can do this, and we have talked about some of this before. There are some video packages you can actually record if you have a disease or a cancer, for example, that you know you've only got a certain amount of time left. You can do some video recordings and answer some questions about your life. And so you can have that at the funeral. People can come and say, hey, James, what was your favourite moment in your life? And you can answer, even though you're no longer with us. So that's been one part of it. We've talked also a little bit about using AI. Now, how you could use AI, you don't even have to know that you're going to die. You could have been suddenly had an accident, a car accident, and then, oh my gosh, James is no longer with us. And then we feed in some of the things that you've written, maybe some text messages, some emails, and AI is clever enough from that to learn how you would speak and how you would talk. And then I can have a conversation with you, even though you're no longer here. So they're possible.
And it's a conversation.
It's a conversation. It's not just a strict, okay, James had this opinion.
You've got to ask the right questions to get the answers that have been prepared.
That's right. It's not like that. You can actually just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And again, the AI tool will take on the persona of James and away you go. Now, so that's been possible. And we've talked a little bit about that in the past, some different ways of doing that. Where the concern is now is the negative impacts on mental health. So, for example, a loved one dies, a partner dies, a child dies. It's terrible. And I feel for anyone out there that's lost someone close to them way too young. But if you then go and feed information into a chatbot, to an AI tool, and you keep having these conversations, where some of the psychiatrists and psychologists are concerned is that you'll then hold on to that person for way too long. And part of the process of moving on is basically grieving and then getting to the point where, okay, I'm coming to terms with the fact that that person's no longer here. And my mum died a couple of years ago, and there'd be times when something would happen and I'd pick up the phone and ring my mum, oh, this is pretty cool, this happened. And for the first maybe 6 months after that, every now and again, something would happen. I have to ring mum and, I can't ring mum anymore. So I get that. And then you get to the stage where I don't have that thought anymore. But if you had a chatbot, if you had a tool where you could do that, would you keep doing it for years after? And then you actually get to the stage where you never move on. And that's where the psychiatrists are concerned about that. And they've talked about the fact that grieving is an integral part of moving on, whereas maybe some of these digital afterlives would actually have a negative impact on that grieving process, that moving on. What really comes to the core question here is, what is our consciousness? What level is our consciousness at? What level does technology play in that? Can that really mimic a human? It's, what is, we don't even really understand what the brain is. We understand that memory is enforced or reinforced by repetition, but we don't really quite understand how even memory works.
Yeah.
How does a thought work in our mind? Can we get a human to be simulated by an AI tool just by previous interactions and previous learnings? How do you have that original thought? We're talking about titanium before. How does someone have that original thought of taking a laser powder bed fusion machine and using that in a different way? How does that AI tool do that? How did the human do that in the first place? So it raises a whole lot of questions. I'm not sure that I love the idea of having a loved one afterwards being able to have that conversation, have that chat with them. The memory should be good enough, hopefully.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need that, but it certainly a tool that's being used.
Well, I guess, yeah, for some people they're going to see this as a way of being able to deal with the loss and the grief. But, yeah, I hear what you're saying there, that letting go is all part of the grieving process.
Jump forward 100 years, is there some religious movement that's been created out of someone that was a significant figure, and then AI chatbot was created, and then they all keep worshipping this thing that's going on. I can see a movie being written about that. I don't know if it'll be real life in 100 years. But
Well, I can see a lot of people talking to Elvis, having conversations with Elvis.
that's right. And all you need is someone there's enough.
Well, there's
Not
a
even
lot
footage.
of video footage of
There's a lot of
Elvis.
video footage, but you don't even need video footage. All you need is someone that's got enough of the words that are spoken or written by that person, and that would be enough to feed into an AI chatbot and say, okay, I want you to take on this persona. So absolutely right. Elvis, many famous stars I'm sure people would love to have a chat with. So it's a scary thought.
Well, let's lighten the mood a little with somewhat of an odd marriage between two completely separate techs. Fans of the first-person shooter game Doom can now get their yard work done, mowing the lawn, and all the while shooting bad guys and dungeon fiends. Matt, robotic lawnmowers and computer games. What?
It is exactly that. Now, Doom, of course,
This is bizarre.
Is the
Talk about
word.
people having original ideas. This is like Homer Simpson's car that he designed.
That's right, it is. And Doom. So Doom was released in 1993. I loved Doom when it came out.
It's good fun.
Played it, first-person shooter. You would argue that a lot of the games that are played now are really the much more advanced modern versions of that original first-person shooter. So it created that genre. I was going to say enhanced that, but it really created that whole genre. There's a bit of a movement now where people are saying, let's see what else we can play Doom on. And it came out of DreamHack in Sweden, where they just showed off that Doom, and it's pretty simple. You go back to the original Doom, it's pretty pixelated, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't need a lot of computing power. So there's a bit of a challenge out there to any company that's got technology to see what else you can run Doom on.
So, sorry, you said it was the Swedes.
It was
So
it was at DreamHack Winter, which happened to be held in Sweden.
in Sweden, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So
So this is an interesting segue. The lawnmower company,
the lawnmower company Husqvarna
right? Okay.
have decided that they want to join in this game as well. Now, I've actually got a Husqvarna robotic lawnmower, and I haven't tried it on this, but apparently I can load up Doom on it. It doesn't do anything useful. I can't go and basically exterminate my weeds, for example, with this.
Right.
All I would do is I'd park it in the corner and I'd use...
So it can't even actually be mowing the lawn.
No, because you're kind of walking around after it, then trying to mow the lawn at the
that'd be
same
hard.
time. So you probably get
That's where you chop your toes off.
defeat the purpose of having a robotic lawnmower to save yourself walking around the lawn while you walk
Yep.
around the lawn.
Yep.
You use the onboard display, which has only got a small onboard display. You've got a control knob, a start button there, the game controls. So you basically play it with the controls there. It's really just, again, the latest challenge. You've seen some other things where you've had it basically being playing Doom on there. So Minecraft, there's a portal you can create within Minecraft to actually play Doom within Minecraft. So you're playing Minecraft and you go into a portal and play Doom. There's been pregnancy tests that have had enough technology in them to be able to run Doom on the pregnancy test. I want to see those pregnancy tests because I don't know much technology is in pregnancy tests, but apparently enough in those. So it's really this whole thing to say...
I'm just thinking, some of these people with these great ideas, they could be like doctors or nurses or teachers or policemen or people offering a service to the community. Instead, they're putting Doom onto robotic lawnmowers.
That's right. It's really showing off the technology that's there. And it really is this whole thing about what else can you port Doom to? And the answer is pretty much anything because it really is only
It's
basic.
hilarious.
So if you've got a Husqvarna lawnmower out there, now be satisfied that after it's done the job mowing the lawn and you've saved all that time from not having to mow the lawn yourself, you can then sit in the corner and play Doom and
Find
waste the
yourself a
time.
shady spot in the garden and
That's
play some
right.
Doom.
Exactly right.
Being a global sensation is a tricky thing, but Taylor Swift seems to have worked it out fairly well. She's very talented and knows how to write a catchy tune with lyrics that speak to a broad demographic. She also has a juggernaut of an entourage to make things happen. and make those mammoth concerts like that of her Eras tour really, really explode. But what has helped her to really take the world in the palm of her hand is the way she's exploited technology and the telcos to give the bajillions of fans who couldn't get tickets the Taylor Swift concert experience from the comfort of their own homes, Matt.
Well, I'm going to go back a bit first before I talk about the Taylor Swift concerts and the impact to the carriers, just to show how much we've changed in terms of the concerts. And I'm going back to March 2007 here. I had to speak at a conference in Vegas and I didn't have much time, so I was literally flying to Vegas, and I think it was the next day to speak at the conference and basically fly back home. So I was there for a couple of days.
Jet lag.
Yeah, that's right. So when I landed, the typical thing I try and do is get into the time zone of where I'm at. So I landed in the afternoon and I went, right, I'll walk the streets of Vegas. That should keep me awake. And as I'm walking the streets of Vegas, went past Caesar's Palace, and there at the Coliseum, playing in maybe half an hour's time, was Elton John. He was doing his Red Piano concert series. And I thought, well, that's going to keep me awake. So I rocked on there, got a ticket. I wasn't sure if I would, but I managed to get a ticket. I'm thinking, oh, cool, I haven't seen Elton John live before. I sat down and this is all pretty cool. Now, 2007, March 2007, iPhones hadn't been released yet. I had my trusty BlackBerry. And back in those days, I used to also carry a camera. Seems a bit ancient now, but it was a separate physical device, folks. One thing that you just had one job, but it was to take photos. It was a little Sony slimline digital camera. And I sat there in the audience. Oh, that's pretty cool. I pulled out my camera to take a photo of Elton John on stage. And I'm sure the security guard was related to Usain Bolt, because as I drew out the camera in the motion, ready to lift it to take a photo, bang, the security guard was onto me.
And you were on the floor with your hands behind your back being cuffed.
Almost like that. I'm thankful that I got to keep my camera. It was a very stern, no photos allowed, no video, no photos allowed in this concert, and had to put the camera back in my pocket. I'm surprised he didn't take it off me and get it on your way out the door maybe. So that was 2007. No photos allowed, no videos allowed. Don't even think about it. And, of course, no one had a phone in their pocket they could take videos or photos on, or you could, but it wouldn't have mattered because it would have been a couple of grains on the stage that you would have seen. Fast forward to today when we've got Taylor Swift concerts, so not that far from 2007, and I think security guards would be pouncing on you saying, where's your phone? Get your phone out. Start taking some videos. Because everyone at these concerts has their phone out, taking videos, taking photos.
I'm one for just immerse yourself in the experience and enjoy the memory.
Oh, James, no. You're not having a good time unless you're telling people how good a time you're having.
You're able to send them a message with video footage right there.
Look at how much fun I'm having at this concert. Yeah. It's not just enough to enjoy it for yourself. You've got to tell people about it. And that's what people do at, well, obviously the Taylor Swift concert. So that has an impact on the telcos. To give you some idea, so the MCG, Melbourne Cricket Ground, a large stadium, AFL Grand Final, typically they get 100,000 people there. Obviously the telcos know how to deal with a crowd. They have 100,000 people there. Not on a regular basis, but certainly a large crowd on a regular basis. The three telcos in Australia have got enough bandwidth capability to be able to cater to a large audience. But in the Taylor Swift concert, there was just less than 100,000, 96, 97,000. But the data usage for the Taylor Swift concert was 200% higher than something like a major sporting contest. So obviously, maybe a sporting contest, they do sit back and just watch the contest and maybe send the occasional photo or video. But at the Taylor Swift concert, it just seems like it's happening the whole time. And
it's like the problem they had at the Super Bowl when everyone went to the toilet at the same time in America with their plumbing. But this is
data-wise. That's right.
Data-wise, and they've got a glut there.
So each concert consumed about 15 terabytes of mobile data.
Wow.
That's each concert. So, and this is, I'm talking about Australia. I haven't researched overseas. In Australia, each concert, 15 terabytes. Fans streamed about 5,000 hours of video content. So if you put that another way, if you could somehow gather all the video that was streamed, not just the video that was shot, only the video that was streamed, you could have 7 months of watching that one concert from, well, pretty much every angle
there is
around the stadium. So that was even after carriers brought in additional coverage. So, for example, some carriers have a device called a cow, cell on wheels, and they'll bring that in when they think there's going to be more data usage. So they brought some of those in, but still they struggled. So the 15 terabytes would have probably been more if they would have had enough bandwidth capabilities. Now, when you start to break that down, not just based on Taylor Swift's concerts, although that probably contributed, our annual mobile data consumption in Australia increased by 30% in 2023 over 2022. Now, that's a large chunk, and you can see how it adds up pretty quickly if you keep going at 30% per year. And I might have thought, if someone had have asked me what would have happened to data consumption over the last few years, I might have thought that it went up during COVID-19, but then after that, I thought it might have gone down because people were getting back in the office, not using their connections as much, but still a 30% increase from 2022.
People had formed a habit over COVID and they couldn't let go.
Yeah, you're probably spot on, actually.
And I'm right there too.
So if you're one of those. So what's going to happen in 2024, I'm not sure, but the estimation worldwide is that the mobile data that was used in 2023, by 2029, that number will triple. So over the next 6 years, we'll see a tripling of mobile data across the world. Wow. So, Carrie, it's a challenge. And obviously we've got things like 5G coming out to actually allow faster data speeds and obviously more data in that. And the data plans are quite incredible now in terms of the amount of data you get on your plans. But Taylor Swift is just an indication, I suppose, those concerts, of what's happening in the world. But Taylor Swift was obviously a big jump in that as well.
Absolutely. Now, who out there is tired of having to charge their phone daily? Does your phone conk out before bedtime? We're all slaves to our battery chargers in the modern age. There's genuine anxiety when you go on an overnight trip and realise that your charger is sitting on the bedside table at home. Matt, how far away are we from long life phone batteries?
Well, it depends if you're prepared to make some sacrifices. And I have done the same with my watch. The latest watch I've got a couple of revisions ago, I went for the larger watch in the brand that I use, and I didn't really need all the extra features, but I like the idea of 2-day battery life instead of 1-day battery life. So if I do go away just for a quick overnight trip, I don't need to worry about the charger. So that's great. It is a bit bigger though. What we've got now is Avenir Telecom has unveiled their Energizer smartphone. Now, this Energizer smartphone, called the P28K, has got a 28,000 milliamp hour battery. Now, to give you some sort of context there...
That sounds like a lot, but I'm not quite sure what our frame of reference is.
Well, an iPhone 15 Pro, for example, has got a 3,274 milliamp hour battery. So 28,000, 3,000, or 3,500 if you like. Yeah, that's big. But you've got some sacrifices to make with it. For a start, it's 570 grams. So that doesn't sound like too much. But again, if I use an iPhone 15 Pro, it's more than half a kilo. Then an iPhone 15 Pro is 187 grams. So again, maybe 3 times the weight of that or thereabouts. So
it's going to drag down your shorts pocket.
It's certainly going to do that. And the thickness as well, it's not back to the old days of the old Motorola brick phone, but it's 27.8 millimetres thick. So it's fairly thick. Now, what do you get for that? Obviously, a bigger battery gives you some extra battery life. You get 122 hours of talk time and 2,252 hours of standby time. That's about 94 days. So you take it 3 months later, I better charge it up now. You're probably talking on it during that time, so it might not quite last 3 months. But that gives you an idea. Now, it's not the flashiest smartphone ever. It's not too bad. It's got 3 rear cameras. It's got a 6.78-inch screen, 1080p LCD. So, again, not the flashiest features. 256 gig of internal memory. But, again, there are people out there who just say, I'm sick of charging. I don't need flash features. I just want a phone that I can just use until I stop and then plug it in every now and again. And this would absolutely fit the bill.
Well, assuming you can get coverage, if you were to go out in the sticks for a bit, it would be the one to have, wouldn't it?
It would be. And people do buy a lot of the extra battery packs that they can then plug in. And they come in various sizes, 5,000, 10,000 milliamp. You can get 20,000 milliamp hour. But this one, 28,000 milliamp hour built into the phone itself. Fantastic. So we have gone a long way, haven't we? We've gone from get the phone as small as you possibly can and battery life just to get you through a day maybe to now, sure, it'll be huge, but it'll get you through days and days. Having said that, I remember the very first phones that we were selling back in 1990. Then some of these phones came with 2 batteries because you could take the battery off and swap it over back in those days. To get you through a day, they came with 2 batteries. So we've come a long way since then where we can typically get through a day now, or in this case, get through 94 days.
Now, all good things must come to an end, and the age of the grumbling supercar is approaching the twilight with the arrival of BYD's Yangwang U9 electric supercar. Ferrari and Lamborghini enthusiasts will tell you that it's all about the noise of the purring tiger, as well as the performance. But I feel like their words will fall on deaf ears as the new kid on the block, the next generation that is, creeps into car shows and onto the streets of Monaco and Beverly Hills quietly as a mouse. Matt, in the new supercar show, cars will speak louder with their actions.
Yes, they will indeed. And BYD is going quite well. The last
they're exploding in the market.
The last quarter of the calendar year 2023, they sold 526,409 vehicles, and that took over the number one spot for EVs worldwide ahead of Tesla, 484,507. And my brother has got to the stage where he couldn't choose between a BYD and a Tesla, so he's ordered both and paid the small deposit, and whichever one comes first he'll take and the other one he'll cancel. Let's hope they don't both turn up on the same day and then he's got two of them, he only needs one. But certainly BYDs are making an impact. And this is really, well, yes, you can buy this car, but it's really to show off what EVs are capable of. And I think we need a new definition for supercar. This is the interesting part. I used to think of supercars back in the day when I was growing up and looking at Ferraris and Lamborghinis. 4.5 seconds, 0 to 100 was a bit of an indicator that this was a supercar we're talking about. But of course, my wife's basic little Tesla does 3.1 seconds. So it's a supercar, but I wouldn't call it a supercar. So we need a new definition now that might not be that friendly to the Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but is a new definition. To give you an idea of this one, so Yangwang is the luxury brand of BYD. A bit like Lexus is the luxury brand for Toyota, Yangwang is the luxury brand for BYD. This is their second car they've launched, and it's really, to my mind, to show off what you can do. $360,000, so a lot of money, but still less than if you want to go out and buy a Ferrari SF90 or something similar to that. You're going to be paying probably twice that amount. So pretty good. This thing would actually leave a Ferrari for dead. 0 to 100 in 2.36 seconds.
Yeah, wow.
Standing 400-metre drag strip time of 9.78 seconds. I mean, under 10 seconds is always very impressive for that. So 9.78, and always a bit silly. They're always quite top speeds. But when can you do it? 309.19 kilometres an hour. When can you do that? At least 0 to 100, you go out on the highway. You can do that and then just you have to go any faster than when you get to 100. But 309.19 kilometres an hour,
if you need to do it on the Autobahn, it'll be able to hold its own.
And that's fine. On the Autobahn, you're right. But around Australian roads, I don't know too many that are above 110 k's an hour. So you've got 960 kilowatts. You've got 1680 newton metres of torque, 4 electric motors, so essentially one for each wheel. Yeah, which makes sense. And just to give you an idea of the specs of it, the rear wing can give you 280 kilograms of downforce. Now, I hate when they quote downforce in kilograms because kilograms is a mass, not a force, but that's how they've quoted this particular one, and many car companies do. It's still fairly heavy, 2,475 kilograms, but 633 kilograms of that is the battery. And so you can imagine where that battery sit. It's down low. So this thing is going to have a large footprint and it's going to hang to the road. That's right. So I suppose more than anything, it really is just showing off what they can do, what BYD, who people see as a bit of a new kid on the block, they're showing off what they are capable of, but also get people excited about EVs. They're not the golf cart that you drove around the golf course one day and went, oh yeah, ticked away with a governor at 20 kilometres an hour. These things are serious performers.
Exactly. And I know there are still some people who are riding their supercars and really need to hear the noise, the throaty noise of a supercar. But I just feel like those days are numbered, folks. Enjoy them while they last. Now, Aussie listeners may have caught this story on the national news, and who doesn't love a story about hapless tourists gone a little bit wayward? But always with a family-friendly outcome, of course. Now, we don't want to scare away visitors from our beautiful sandy shores and our picturesque outback bushland. But Matt has a story about some German tourists who had quite the misadventure in far north Queensland after they placed a little too much trust in Google Maps. Matt, Google Maps tend to do a pretty good job for us. Almost always.
Almost always. And you do talk to me sometimes about your students and saying you've just got to apply a common sense factor. If the calculator gives you a number, does that number make sense? So don't just rely on technology exclusively. And maybe these German tourists should have been students of yours because maybe they would have learnt the common sense factor. That might have been good. So they did follow Google Maps and it directed them down a remote road and it went. They're trying to reach a little place called Barmager, Bamaga. I think it's pronounced Barmager. It's a small town in northern Queensland. But they were sent through a national park, and that national park has been closed from the 1st of December last year, and it's been announced as being closed until the end of June this year. So don't go there. But, of course, Google Maps hadn't had that information, wasn't updated. So they're driving along happily thinking, the road's getting a bit rough here. But anyway, Google Maps tells us to keep going. So this will get us through to where we're going to go to. They got about 48 kilometres into the park and then they hit some wet mud, which was one of the reasons the national park was closed, got completely stuck in the mud. And so they're sitting there and they go, well, that's all right. We'll just pick up our phone and ring. Oh, hold on. No cell service out here in the middle of this national park. What do we do now? So they played around and they started deciding they would have to trek out and they started trekking out on foot, not really realising the area they were in had a few crocs. Well, they did realise that when they saw some crocodiles and some lovely snakes. Spiders probably weren't that scary compared to the snakes and crocodiles they saw. Some wild pigs, they can be pretty scary. So they had a bit of an ordeal. And, of course, technology did help them because they actually had a drone with them. They had a small drone. So when they walked along trying to work out where to go and which way was the best direction to go, send the drone up. Now, I want to see this used in a movie because in movies you'll see people stuck in a jungle or stuck out on a desert landscape. Now, remember, the distance to the horizon is, from memory, 3.6 times the square root of the height you are above the landscape, gives you the distance to the horizon.
I don't remember that.
So it's a good one because if you're standing there on the shore, for example, and let's say you were 2 metres tall, and not many people are 2 metres tall where their eyes are, but if you were 2 metres above the ocean, square root of 2 is 1.4, 1.4 times 3.6. So in round numbers, when people say, wow, look at how far out to sea I can see, well, it's about 5 kilometres. And that's about it. So when you're stuck out on a desert landscape, you go, right, I know there's a town around here. It's only 50 kilometres away. Well, you might see 5 kilometres. Stand on the roof of your car. Sure, that might show you a bit further. But send a drone up. Hey, now we're talking. So they sent a drone up, and that was how they worked out which direction to walk in. But it took them 22 hours of trekking to finally get to somewhere where they could find some sort of vague civilization and get rescued. So it is a bit of a lesson on Google Maps and just use some common sense. And I remember, it wasn't Google Maps, but I remember many decades ago, or at least a decade and a half ago, we're on the way to some holidays and my parents-in-law were going in a separate car and I said, well, my sat-nav in my car with, it used to be back in those days, an old DVD you'd put in the car. Maybe it was a bit out of date, but I went, it sells me to go down this road. And my father-in-law says, well, I know this road over here is quicker because I've got experience. I'm someone with experience and that counts for a lot. And I said,
what about my technology?
That's right. So I went with the technology. He went with experience and he got there about an hour before I did.
Oh, wow.
So
lesson learned.
Lesson learned, that's right. So use some experience, use some common sense. I mean, obviously GPS is incredibly important to us. Satellite navigation is important to us. There was a survey that was done that said nearly half of US adults would be completely lost without their sat-nav or GPS. So, and I say GPS, I know there are different systems around the world. I'm saying GPS as a global term that people generally understand. But in North Carolina, there's a family that's suing Google for negligence after a relative drowned because they followed Google Maps over a collapsed bridge.
Oh,
you would think maybe
that's
there's
a
some
tragedy, but
yeah, I know, a bit of common sense, maybe just not following it blindly. There's another one in India where 2 doctors drowned after they followed Google Maps after a monsoon. And, of course, again, there was damage to roads. And so, yes, trust them. Yes, they're fantastic, but you just have to apply a bit of that common sense.
Proceed with caution at all times.
Yes, that's right. So, well done to the German tourists. They got out of it in the end, but just...
And they got out with it, smiles on their faces as well.
They've got out with a national story. So.
And no bites from crocodiles or nasty snakes.
Nothing like that.
Okay, folks, that's it for today. The battery indicator light is flashing somewhat urgently, and that can only mean one thing. I'm going to wind this shindig up and send Matt off to find the charger. But thanks for another cracking tech talk anyway, Matt.
Well, my battery light is not flashing because I've got an Energizer 28,000 milliamp hour battery, so I'm right to keep going.
Okay, all right then. I'm off to mow the backyard now with my 1995 Game Boy duct tape to the handlebar. I love the great ideas that you can pick up in this podcast every episode. I'm James Eddy, and it's a delight to bring Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson straight to your earbuds, car speakers, and transistor radios week after week in all its low-fat, low-sugar, gluten-free, polyunsaturated glory. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to catching you again and the friends you've brought along for the ride in one more week's time. Until then, take care, and we'll see you when we see you.